Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for coming out. My name is Damon Isaiah Turner, and I'm with the United Nations Association of Portland. Really appreciate you coming out in this really inspiring weather that we're having in Oregon. I want to just be able to read off our collaborative organization. We've been working on this for a couple of months, and it's been a great collaborative, about 7 people. Greater Portland Sustainability Education Network, Kids First Project, No Agenda Foundation, Lan Yufan, Portland Community College, of course, Portland Community College Cascade, Black Student Union, Toba Corps, Trash for Peace, United Nations Association, and the Portland Human Rights Commission. And so as one of our sponsors, I would like our chair of the Portland Human Rights Commission to come up and say a couple of things.
Good evening. My name is Shabri Vickers. As the slide says, I didn't know there was going to be a slide. So there you go, you know how to spell my name. First of all, just welcome and good evening on today, December 10th. This day is extremely important across nations and across the globe because it commemorates the date in 1948 when communities came together to accept the United Declaration of Human Rights. And so it's always hosted on the 10th of December, even if it falls on interesting days and times. And so I really appreciate you all showing up here tonight, as Damon mentioned, with this inspiring weather that we have out and that we've been dealing with. I want to just pay note to the universal theme of the Human Rights Day, which is our rights, our freedoms, always. And I know here in Portland, we are looking at it as our educational rights and our educational freedom always, which means it's extremely apropos that we are here at PCC. As the community relations manager for one of our campuses here at PCC, I'm extremely happy to have you all here. The concept of accessibility and affordability with regard to education is something that stands at the heart of community colleges across the nation, but specifically for Portland Community College, it's something that we appreciate. So for anyone who's associated with PCC, be proud of the work that you're doing. I believe it is highlighted here for students at PCC, for folks who support PCC, all taxpayers, because you guys support PCC. Thank you for what you do. You help us actually live up to the ideal of educational freedom and our rights around education. Lastly, I just would say that as the chair of the City of Portland Human Rights Commission, I'm truly encouraged by all the folks who are here tonight because you can be many other places, but primarily because human rights work is not always easy, it's not always popular, and oftentimes it can be considered fringe or it can be considered kind of way out there. If you think back to 1948 and where we were as a nation and where we are today, much has changed. But if you look at where we are currently, so much more needs to be done. And oftentimes the folks who work under the title of human rights are at the forefront of that work. And the great thing about human rights is it is not wrapped up in any other label outside of the concept of being human. And that's something that we all share here, whether we have a religion that we associate with or not, whether there is a cultural or ethnic connection that we identify with. We here today are human, and that is what we stand for and the rights of them. And so lastly, hopefully everyone picked up the little blue book. I have like 50 million of them, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I would just say, as you look at this time and this commemoration of today's date, notice Article 26, the right to education. That's what we're here talking about. All of the other rights that are specified in that book help us get to a place where education is something that can be realized. And so thank you for being here today. On behalf of the City of Portland Human Rights Commission, I appreciate you all. And tomorrow is our huge Human Rights Awards ceremony where we get to celebrate folks in the community who are champions of human rights in the City of Portland. And so for folks who will be there, thank you, and to the panel. And I should just mention that we have commissioners who are here today. Damon Isaiah Turner is a human rights commissioner. If you want to give him a round of applause. And Alicia Zhao, who's actually on the panel today, is also a commissioner of ours. And so it's good to know that we're in the right places at the right times. Thank you guys so much, and welcome to today's event.
Thank you, Shabri. Without further ado, to introduce our illustrious panel that we have for you this evening. Our moderator for this evening is Xander McPherson, who's been a wonderful asset and is a leader on the PCC Cascade campus. Xander McPherson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Xander McPherson, as was mentioned. I am one of the Black Student Union presidents here at PCC Cascade, and I'm also a member of the African American Men's Scholar Program, which is run by Dr. General Johnson, who's on our panel. So again, thank you for coming out tonight, and I would like to introduce our wonderful speakers. First, we have Dr. General Johnson. He is one of the assistant directors of the Multicultural Center and the program director of the African American Men's Scholar Program. We have Kofi Desu, who is the director of Togo Core. We have Alicia Zhao, who is on the executive director of Kids First Project, which is a nonprofit organization. We have Deidre Schutz, who is the director of Lani Fan Foundation. And last but not least, we have Nikki Gillis, who is the diversity and equity. She's the diversity and equity officer at Mount Hood Community College. So if you can give them a warm round of applause. And each of these individuals were handpicked because of their work within the community and abroad on education and the importance of it. So I will let them go ahead and talk to you about education, their work, and how it relates to human rights. So first we will begin with Dr. General Johnson.
And you can stand or sit,
I'm used to standing. Thank you. Hi, my name is Dr. General Johnson, and I've been here at the Cascade campus since 2012. I've been in Portland for 11 years. It'll be 12 in March. Can you hear me? Is that better? Oh, thank you. I apologize for that. My work, my capacity here at the college has been as a faculty in health, biology, and education. Currently, I have the role of assistant coordinator of the Multicultural Center here at PCC Cascade. This is our first year, and we're new to the Cascade campus. However, there are multicultural centers at all campuses here in the district. And this is my second year as program advisor for the African American Men's Scholars Program. Prior to that, for 3 years, I co-managed the National Institutes of Health program here at the college called the Bridges to Baccalaureate program in conjunction with Portland State University and Oregon Health Sciences University. In my capacity, what I did was worked with students both academically, personally, and professionally in order to achieve things that were important to them by way of goals. For those 3 years, I did that particularly with those who were interested in careers in STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. When that grant ended, within weeks, I had an opportunity of being the first to start the program for the African American men. Now, these things are important, not just for men of color, women of color, but for people in general. And when I think about education as a human right, I can't think about that specifically for just one group. I think about it for all groups. However, in my capacity as a person who has worked consistently with underrepresented minorities, being one myself, I can't think of how the impact of that will impact the world in general, both in our world, being in the United States, but in the world in general, globally. So for that reason, I feel that much of what I'm doing is somewhat of giving back. What I mean by that is I was able to take part of opportunities where people felt that it was important for me to have a good education and that I had a right to an education as well. What that looked like for me was having mentorship. I am from Washington, D.C. I'm a native of the District of Columbia. As a result of that, I was used to seeing people of color in every aspect and spectrum of the population. When I went to college, I went to Ohio to go to college, and it was very different. It was a very different place. I did go to a historically black college and university, the Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio, and this was the first time I had an opportunity of seeing the impact of having an opportunity to be educated by people that looked like me. Now, with that in mind, I have to also say that the impact that that had on me was very, very significant and profound. For instance, my mentor, my research mentor, was not a person of color. She was from Washington, D.C., but she was Caucasian, because I was interested in doing research in a field of study that no other individual at that campus had any type of expertise in. She taught me everything that I knew about research before I was able to go on to further my education in graduate school and then go on to medical school. So you notice that I'm talking about the importance of myself as a person of color getting an education, but I'm also talking about the importance of people in general getting an education. I learned early that not every mentor that I will have is always going to look like me. I would have loved to have had a male and a person of color, but that wasn't the opportunity that I had. So we have to be able to be aware of what opportunities are being presented to us, particularly if there are things that are related to goals that we have an orientation to. Also, we have to be mindful of some of the stereotypical threats that I think are germane to the experience of a person of color. Can you all hear me? Okay, I apologize if I'm going in and out. What I mean by a stereotypical threat would be the possibility of being looked at or viewed based on a stereotype of a particular race, culture, or people. And these things come up, particularly for people of color, when sometimes there is a sense that one is being or experiencing an implicit bias that has nothing to do with the individual at all, but it's based on some type of stereotype that's been pretty much viewed through the media. So those things come up periodically for people of color. Another thing that comes up is the fact that sometimes we may not feel like we have allies that are really supporting us or able to support us in a way that's going to help us to achieve goals. And so these are things that I think and feel are very important to the experience that many students have, particularly of color, across the nation, across the world. Now, how does that look for us here at PCC? This is why we have the type of program that we have. You're trying to give me a... Huh?
The handheld mic.
Oh, should I use this one? Oh, I apologize. It's okay. Oh, now you know. I should know better. How's that? Is that good? Okay. Thank you. All right. So, in thinking about helping students achieve their goals, we have to look at multiple things here, not just the fact that it may be an academic goal or a professional goal, but there may be personal goals that are equally important. So we look at all of these things together or collectively. And typically how that looks for most people is we come to these institutions that are very solution-oriented or have solution-based programming. And how that can hurt developing individuals' education is that if we don't really take a serious inquiry as to why something isn't happening the way that it could or should happen, then we're going to consistently continue to build programs that are very solution-based, where we have data, we have obvious gaps that are related to the data, and then we go directly to best practices and some type of solution. what typically happens in what will be called an anecdotal paradigm is that we skip the gap period. And that's where lots of people get lost, okay? And that would be where there are people who, although education is a part of a value or a potential value, they miss that because somehow that algorithm of data, gap, best practice, and solution got missed. So some people fall through the cracks, as they say. So that crack would be the gap. So what I do is I address not only the data, but I address the gap. So what that means is that we look at the needs of the individual versus what I think a person needs. So that individual or those individuals are invited to the conversation. Based on those needs, we create programming that centers around what the individual needs. And what we see is that we have individuals who are successful. No one really questions the ability, although sometimes we may not see balance in one's ability relative to what it may appear on paper. So what we have to do is we have to not just look at how people are growing vertically, but we want to make sure that they're growing horizontally so that they're able to have brevity and depth in their experience and not just say, oh, I passed the test and I got an A in the class. Well, what can you tell me about that class? Oh, well, that was a long time ago. Versus being able to work diligently to achieve a certain, achieve a certain goal within a classroom, but be able to tell someone about the actual subject matter that you studied. So these are the things that we're working on. These are the things that add value to what it is that we're studying. And the more we do that, then the more we recognize not only that we have options, but we can make choices to those options and we can have and co-create the life that we desire and that we really want to live. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. So next, at the end of this, we're going to have a facilitated discussion with questions and answer for the panelists. So just keep your questions in mind. And next, we're going to go to Kofi Desu. If you could give him a warm round of applause, please.
Good evening. Happy Human Rights Day. My name is Kofi Desu. I came to Portland in 2008 with my family. Can you hear me? Is it good? Okay. From Togo. My country is Togo. It's in West Africa. If you know Ghana, it's just east of Ghana. So that's where I came from. The official language in Togo is French. So you can feel the French accent in my English. When I was little, I was dreaming of going to school as far as possible. Why? Because I was inspired by teachers, government officials, doctors, university professors, and all of them look like me. Because in my country, 99.9% is black. So for me, black is the norm. Any other colors are something strange for me. And I was inspired by these people. So I went to college in Togo, graduated in 1990, and I started working. I worked there and worked for the U.S. Embassy in Togo for about 18 years, and I decided to move to America. Why? Because the college degree I got there was not enough for me. I wanted to go far as possible as I was dreaming when I was a little. So that was my main reason I decided to come to America, for my personal interest. And it's the same interest for my children, also my wife. So when we came here, I found a job with the city of Portland, And then immediately after that, I decided to go to school again. So when you come to my house, everybody's in school. Some friends suggested that I should declare my house a charter school. But I'm in the process. So you can see how, we value education in my family, in my country. And that's the expectation I have for myself and for my children too. My children were in school in Togo before coming here, and their teachers, they are all black. But once here, they are in front of, colleagues, classmates, and teachers who don't look like them. And it's not easy. So they share with me some of the struggles that they face. And before starting talking about the struggles, I want to say thank you for all the teachers who have been doing their work to provide education to our children. You can see from my story that education is one of, I think, the biggest opportunities for me that you can find in America. When they say America is a land of opportunity, education is, for me, the biggest opportunity. That's where you can invest in yourself and hope for a better future. So we have that expectation, and we have high expectation on our children. And we also expect the school administration, the teachers, the government to provide the appropriate support so that our children can succeed. Their success is beneficial not for only for the families, but for the community at large. In fact, here our children lost that idea that they are going to school to come and support their parents when they are old. That idea does not exist anymore here, but back home, that's what we expect from our children. Go to school, succeed. When I'm very old, maybe I will not have social security, so you will be my social security. But that idea is lost here, but it's okay, because they will be the social security for the whole community. And we expect the whole community to support them. And they are facing a lot of challenges. So what I do with Togo Core is to organize community dialogues, to share stories. Parents and children share their stories. The parents face a lot of challenges they're raising their children, but they are doing their best so that the children can go to school and be polite, respectful, listen to the teachers, and succeed. So parents are doing their work, and we need the teachers, the administration, to also provide the appropriate support so that our children can enjoy fully access to education. Because it's not enough to say that we have, education rights. We need to enjoy it. Stating that, we have rights is not enough. With rights comes responsibilities, expectations. Who are responsible? Everybody is responsible. Parents are responsible. Students are responsible. The government is responsible. The school administration is responsible. The teachers are responsible. And are we doing our share part, of this responsibility? That's the question we need to ask. But looking at the outcomes, the results, the school graduation rates, it is concerning for our communities because it is low. If you come to immigrant and refugee communities, specifically African immigrant and refugee communities, the high school graduation rate is very low. It's very low. It's not because our children don't study. It's because they are facing a lot of challenges, adapting to this culture and not receiving the appropriate support that they need. Providing the same thing to everyone is not going to get us to the same result. children are different. I have 5 of them. They are all different. So one example that I want to give to show you some of the struggles. Last week my nephew, who is living with us, called me. He came here and he's going to college, but to get financial aid, it is a struggle. The school asked him to get a signature or information from his father, who is in Togo, because he was born after 1992. But he came here as an immigrant alone, as an adult. So after a lot of struggles, one administrator decided to meet with him, and then said, okay, now I understand your problem. I'm going to remove that requirement so that we can move the process forward. But he already spent about 3 months, so he had to find money to pay himself. So when we are talking about accessibility and affordability, it's more expensive for him because he has to spend money, from his own pocket, while other people are getting it, are getting the financial aid, the grants. He did not have access to that. So that's one example. We have a lot of examples, and many adults in our communities face the same challenges. And our children, I cannot tell you what parents and children are telling us. When we organize our dialogues, we record, some videos and edit them, in 3 minutes, 5 minutes, so that we can share with the public. It takes a long time to edit videos, but if you Google and you go to YouTube and you Google my name, you will find some videos about the stories that our children and our parents share. And their stories are not only around education, but it's also around, safety issues, all kinds of issues that immigrant and refugee population are facing in America. Thank you for your attention. If you have some specific questions, let me know. And you can join our Facebook page. It's Togo Community in Oregon. It's there. We have some very good events that we organize, and you have fun. You will eat Togo food and Togo music. We like to dance to celebrate our culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kofi. Now we will have Alicia Zhao present her presentation and give you her story. So thank you, Alicia. Give her a warm hand.
Hi, everybody. Happy Human Rights Day. Today I will be talking about education as a driving force. So a little bit about me. I don't have as interesting as a background as the previous panelists, but I am currently a junior at Lincoln High School. Not only that, but I have had the privilege of serving as a commissioner on Portland's Human Rights Commission. So this is the Human Rights Commission. Okay, and I am also the founder and executive director of Kids First Project. Because education is not just isolated to what happens in the classroom, it is also what happens in our community, what kids are involved in throughout their lives. So this is one of the reasons why I created Kids First Project, a nonprofit that brings educational and recreational programs to youth experiencing homelessness around our community. We focus on hope. This is also our mantra, and it basically represents health, opportunity, play, and education. These are all aspects that I think are rights for every single youth in our community and around the world. And what's special about us is that we're a traveling organization. So instead of just focusing on one shelter, we're able to bring our services to a vast variety of people, because homeless populations are never found in just one area, and every child deserves to have the programs they deserve.
Oh wait, that's not what we want to do.
It's okay. And so
All right, I'll deal with that in a second.
what we do is that we not only empower youth who receive our programs, but we also empower youth through giving. So these youth around our community are able to bring their passions, what they're knowledgeable about, to Kids First projects. So whether it's mentoring, which was created by a PSU student, or poeting, which strives to bring a revolution of poetry by a Lincoln student. We do a lot of things like tutoring, arts and crafts, basically anything for anybody in our community to bring what they know to youth who do not have these same resources. And our mission, I'll just read it out loud since it's not here, and it's to promote hope, again, health, opportunity, play, education, by raising awareness on the lack of funding going towards disadvantaged children, providing the resources necessary for children experiencing homelessness to reach their full potential, freeing up time for parents to get training and job skills, and ultimately breaking the generational cycle of poverty. Some quick facts on homelessness and education is that each year, 610,042 people experience homelessness just in America. And can anybody in this room guess the average age of a person experiencing homelessness in our nation? So just to shout out some numbers. 17, 11, 16. Okay, so it's actually 9 years old. So this just shows all the people that you see on the streets, all the people you see on the waterfront, who are the people that are experiencing chronic homelessness. All of these large ages from like 60 to 80, the average is brought down to just 9 years old because youth are what makes up our homeless population. And this is huge. Without intervention, 27% of homeless youth who are in high school will not graduate this year, and every single year after that if nothing is done. And also, according to the Oregonian, Oregon is ranked 46th in early childhood education and only 48th in graduation rates. So that means we're just above 2 states in our nation, which is incredible. And besides that, outside the classroom, 80% of principals report that play is essential for academic success. It garners support for cognitive, physical, social, and emotional well-being. So I think that what a lot of people don't realize is that it's not just based on the textbooks. It's not just based on the classroom. It's what we do and what we allow our kids to do outside of school that allows them to develop as a person. Naturally, since I am a student, I will be talking about my math projects for a calculus class. So utilizing education and math class is important to understanding modern world issues. This year, I am taking a calculus class, and I really wanted to utilize math to do something that I was passionate about, because why do school if you can't follow what you're interested in? So of course, my research question was, does poverty negatively affect childhood development, ultimately affecting academic performance? So I utilize the power of the learning curve. The learning curve is basically, in a nutshell, something that is able to track a task based on its productivity and efficiency. And I use, as my experiment, 30 students, 30 vocabulary words, 30 seconds, 3 trials, and 2 different schools. Next slide. Okay, so these are just some Portland school demographics. Forest Park is from an upper middle class neighborhood, and Whitman Elementary School is in a place that is struck by poverty. Just in a nutshell, Forest Park has very few people that are actually on free or reduced lunch. Whitman, 100%. Forest Park only has 1.6% of students that are economically disadvantaged. Whitman, 57.9%. In 2011 to 2012, fifth grade students at Forest Park were achieving 94.6% in math and 94.6% in reading for benchmarks. And in fifth grade for Whitman, it was simply 39.7% and 49.2% respectively. So this just shows the huge gap between these schools, basically just because of the neighborhood that they live in. So this was my results. This is the memory capacity. So as you can see, Forest Park is the red line, and they're memorizing significantly more numbers. And this was not surprising to me based on the statistics that I found before. But what was surprising was this. This is the actual differences of learning rates. Forest Park, learning rates are given by numbers. It doesn't really matter what the number is within this, but Forest Park was 1.5450, and Whitman was 1.445. This is simply a difference of 0.005, which is extremely insignificant. This tells us that the ability to learn for both schools is the same, yet because of the lack of resources, which is inferred by the memory results and the statistics that I got, shows that there's simply just not enough resources and opportunities given to students at Whitman. So what a lot of teachers at other schools and people in our public will say is that it's not really, the ability to learn, they say, is that people living in poverty are just at a greater disadvantage because they're just not able to learn as well as people from upper middle class schools. But this is proven wrong because it's simply based on the resources that children are getting, not by their capabilities. So education is a human right. The key components of academic success in our community is the availability and accessibility of after-school enrichment programs. This is the best way to solve our education crises in our community. And again, off of Kids First Project, it's health, opportunity, play, and education. So this is about a personal story of my friend who was also one of my motivations of creating Kids First Project. She faced the impossible in her eyes of becoming homeless. So her family ran a family food cart, and as you know, Portland is known for our food carts, and that's what drives our culture. Yet her family took a turn for the worse when they started losing business, and that's when they found themselves homeless. And her daily commute to school significantly increased from 15 minutes to 2 hours. And on top of that, she had a little brother that she had to worry about who was only 5 years old at the time. And at this time, she was 14, and she was about to go to high school with all the pressures and societal pressures that come with that as well. And she had very little time to focus on classwork. These were just outside stressors that seemed so insignificant, but they all pile on. And she never really thought of asking for a tutor or mentor because when you're worried about what you're going to eat the next day or what your little brother is going through, how could you think about homework above all these issues? So after she got out of homelessness with the help of Portland Homeless Family Solutions, she used her hard times and channeled this to volunteerism. Now she tutors children who experience homelessness, and she also speaks alongside me in a lot of advocacy work to talk about the issues that she faced and how we can really help our community. And this isn't just one person. These are individuals all around our community who are all facing different kinds of problems because everybody is different. And other challenges and barriers that I've learned from other youth experiencing homelessness have included housing, environment, peers, and feelings of isolation. I know a lot of youth experiencing homelessness at the shelter who have actually become depressed because of all the stress that they've faced. So of course, as you guys know, Human Rights Day is not only a day to talk about issues, it's a day to find solutions. And I think that what's so special about human rights is that there's so much intersectionality. So it's crucial to not only pay attention to what is given inside the classroom, but to also tailor these special needs and resources to each individual. We must have an understanding for how they're going through life and what they need, and to be flexible with them, and to understand and to let them know that we understand what they're going through. And schools are the closest thing to a home and family that youth experiencing homelessness have. It's their trusted support system, and because of this, schools are the ones that need to get directly involved. Because youth experiencing homelessness are often embarrassed by what they label themselves, because homelessness does come with a stigma that we can't deny. Schools often don't know who actually is experiencing homelessness. So the first step is to target who it is and to make sure that they are given these resources that we supposedly promised them. And besides that, we need to make sure that every child, no matter what their socioeconomic background is given hope. And besides that, there's also advocacy. So a lot of legislation goes around. So this is more like the government side, but in 2002, the president passed EHCY, which is Education of Homeless Children and Youth. And it's basically providing programs and money for studies and reports to be conducted about youth experiencing homelessness and education. So a lot of legislation goes around, and it's important to know what's going on to support our causes and to help these youth who are often ignored. And then lastly, this is related to Kids First Project, is dedicating time to close the gap. So what is often underestimated is volunteerism and how it can positively impact the youth that are experiencing homelessness. So a lot of people think that it's really just helping them make life easier, or that it's giving time to make meals for them, but it's also giving them emotional support. So this can be extremely valuable, and it includes mentoring for emotional support, tutoring for academic support, friendship, and simply sharing knowledges and experiences. So thank you. I hope you guys really enjoyed what I had to say, and I think what's most important that I want to get across is that anybody can help, whether you're 17 like me or 40 like 50 like my dad. He has been a huge help for me too.
Thank you, Alicia. Oh. Thank you, Alicia. That was great. Next, we have Deidre Schutz from Lonnie Fon here.
Okay, so education is a human right. I'm Deidre Sheets, co-director, co-founder of Lonnie Fon nonprofit international non-government organization. And I wanted to start by introducing our mission just for a slight context. Our mission is that we support international relationships to address high unemployment and environmental issues in West Africa. So in a recent presentation that I was giving at Portland State University this year, among some social entrepreneurs, they asked me, what is the biggest challenge that you face in your work? And I said, by far, cross-cultural disconnect. And I feel like this is a phenomenon that we not only face in our work, but that we see very alive today, right here in the US. And I feel like this is one of the biggest barriers that we face. I also think it's one of the biggest opportunities that we have to create some very positive change in our country. So what I wanted to do is describe a little bit about complexity of cross-cultural relationships. And this diagram was created by Dr. Robert Proudfoot of the University of Oregon. He was the director when I went through the program in international studies. He is self-identified as an Iroquois Native American. And this diagram depicts all these little spokes are aspects of our cultural identity. Each one of us has this going on within ourselves. And what's cool about this is that everyone's different. We all have a different orientation to space. Our linguistic background may or may not be different, but our geographical location in which we grew up is likely different because we can't grow up in the exact same location. We have different ethnic backgrounds. The list goes on. In essence, what I liked about his model is that it depicts that each and every one of us has some wisdom that someone else doesn't. And I feel like this is very empowering in this day and age, that if we were to pool this together into a collective consciousness, I believe that we can solve a lot of our current issues. So Dr. Proudfoot explained to us that cultural identity is a process. It constantly changes, and this is the exciting part. It emerges from not only our historical identity, but from experiences and relationships. And I underline here experiences and relationships because everybody can create an experience. Everybody can create a relationship. We also can transform experiences and relationships. This is very empowering, and I feel like a key to how we can empower everyone to impact our environment and help exchange the wisdom amongst us and enlighten one another. So I'm going to back up to our organization again and our motivation behind our project. Our project started in 1999 through a series of cross-cultural exchanges between US Americans and West Africans. There were some Europeans involved in the mix as well. In 2007, there was a pivot into more formal action. And this was as a result of the local population in Guinea in 2007 revolted against the president because he was abusing his power. And the president responded to the population by putting us under martial law. So locked in our houses for most of the day, we had a lot of time to think. So I was over there during this time. I invited a bunch of people into my apartment because it was one of the safer areas to be. And we started brainstorming what we could do about this situation. So we came up with a non-government organization, which is the equivalent of a nonprofit internationally, called Lonnie Fon, or Peace is Good in English. So Lonnie Fon means peace within in oneself is good, between people, with one's environment, and the higher power. So it's a very profound phrase that can be translated actually in a lot of different West African languages. So again, our mission is to support international relationships to address high unemployment and environmental issues. Now, I'm thinking that two of our activities in particular might be particularly applicable to the US context at this particular period in history. Our first activity and main activity is that we facilitate understanding via exchange. Now, I emphasize exchange here because it flattens the power dynamic. It emphasizes learning on both ends of the spectrum, or everyone involved. We reinforce the learning piece so that no teacher is coming in to implement something, or no expert is coming in to show people how to do things. So, some of our exchange programs include US-based exchanges and dialogues, immersion learning in West Africa in various forms, friendship tourism. This is something I haven't seen before, honestly, and that came out of a conversation between me and a professor in Mali named Sekuba Kamara. And he was concerned about the tourism industry, having foreigners come in and people serving the foreigners. So with the friendship tourism piece of things, we look at forming heart-connected relationships when people are interacting. Whether you're the tour guide, the tourist, or the vending our arts along within the neighborhood. And then lastly, professional partnerships. Again, this is a flattened relationship. We exchange ideas in order to mobilize some of our projects. So the second activity that I think is really applicable to today's education system here in the US is that we incubate locally generated projects. This is extremely important because what we find in West Africa is that if the local population does not understand the project, like if we're coming in from nowhere, trying to implement a solution, they won't understand it necessarily. They may, but not guaranteed. So if they don't understand it, they won't value it, they won't invest in it, they won't therefore maintain it, and it won't be sustainable. We would like to see a sustainable solution that actually benefits the population long term. So our incubation process may be of interest in our current education system here in the US. And I see this happening in pockets, but I think that perhaps this should happen a little more widely. So initially we tap intrinsic motivation. So in other words, we find out what they're interested in, what problems they're interested in solving, what solutions they might propose. And then we exchange diverse perspectives on that issue and that context. And we go and seek out the diverse perspectives. It's not just the people who have the time to be at the table with whom we speak. We go out to the group of people who aren't typically at the table to contribute to the envisioning process and design of the project. Then we facilitate a community vision and then support the project implementation. So the support can be either moral support, could be brainstorming, it could be in the form of helping to find research that helps mobilize what they're doing, sometimes money. So in essence, what I'm advocating for here is that we need a better understanding of cultural identity, and it needs to start earlier. Unfortunately, Dr. Robert Proudfoot's model I got in international studies when I chose that major. I feel like this is information that should be introduced at least by middle school, so that students can reflect on their own cultural identity and work on impacting one another and having more meaningful dialogues around issues that might potentially have tension around them. I do strongly believe that this cultural identity piece, this diverse cultural identity piece that we have here in the US is a barrier, but we can overcome it with some assistance around understanding these dynamics. And I feel like it's one of the biggest, most creative opportunities that we have here in the US. So I encourage you to have courage with some of these issues. They're not easy, the tensions are real. We might be speaking English with one another, for example, but the meaning might get lost. So keep at it with conversations that might not might be getting misunderstood, and have courage to cultivate what's going on inside of yourself. Initiate learning and dialogue across differences, beyond your comfort zone, and I encourage co-creating and being creative across differences. Lastly, I wanted to leave you with this book. Many of you may have read it already. It's very simple. It's called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And he's a very enlightened perspective in my opinion. 4 agreements that he suggests, and I find that these 4 things have helped me a lot in my quest to understand people who I'm still learning a lot about. And the first is, don't take things personally, because oftentimes people will have their own story running in their head, and if they say something angry to you, it's not necessarily you. But just to keep at it, keep a clean heart. Number 2, don't make assumptions. It's easier said than done. We all do it. Number 3, be true to your words, follow through. It's important in establishing trust. And 4, try your best. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Deidre. And then next we have Nikki Gillis. She's going to come and give her same.
All right, thank you so much for having me and for being here tonight. I've worked in community college this is my 14th year now. I'm going to talk a little bit international and then a little bit of some things going on here in Oregon. I was 23, I'd finished my bachelor's degree in communication and intercultural studies. I had wonderful opportunities to truly experience exchanges in other countries, and I got a job at Mount Hood Community College helping to plan activities and coordinate international programs. The students that we had coming to our college were from Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. They all had received a 2-year scholarship that was paid by the US federal government. And they came for 2 years, and the goal was to get an education in environmental science and then return back to their communities. And I thought I'd hit the jackpot, my dream job. It sounded fantastic. And it was, and was for all 13 years that I did that. I learned a ton from these students. These students came from rural areas of their countries. We had every year always 50% or more women, a priority for indigenous populations. 90+% of our students came from very rural areas. They taught me the challenges they faced getting an education that I could not possibly have understood coming from a place of privilege that I did. They had food insecurity, transportation challenges. I had a generation of students that came through that had no fathers, who had all been killed through the 80s and 90s. So those students needed to stay home and work for their family to eat. Women who were told that they should not go to school, that was not for a woman to be educated, it was to stay home and take care of the kids. Students that faced ethnic discrimination, the list goes on, and these are not unique to the 11 countries that I worked with. I know that this goes on around the world, the barriers that people face getting an education. And I think that it's important that we talk about that here, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room understand that and really know that this is reality, but not a lot of people native to Oregon and people in the US hear these stories very often. And I think it is important to acknowledge that so we have a global perspective, but also so that we invest more and value the opportunity that we do have here in the US for opportunity. So when my students came to the college, they were the most dedicated, focused, inspiring young people I had ever interacted with. They were there to learn. They did not speak English when they got there. They started English 2 days later. They were brave to leave their families for 2 years to come to an unknown place. And they all succeeded. But there were a lot of challenges along the way. They had challenges understanding the culture of a college in general. Culture of a college in the US, an even bigger barrier. They had challenges understanding the style of instruction in our classrooms, which was very, very different from what they knew in their communities. They had a difficult time understanding the expectations of the instructor, right? That teamwork wasn't as valued as individual work. So they faced these challenges. And so my role that started out as planning activities and, showing the students around our, beautiful natural resources really turned into a role of being an advocate and helping instructors understand that if students turned in the same work, it was because they wanted to help their friend. They wanted to collectively make sure that everyone was supported and doing well in the class, not because they were cheating and they, were trying to be dishonest. And I found that when you had an opportunity to sit down with instructors, to sit down with people who work in higher education, they wanted to understand those stories, but they don't often hear them. All they have is the assumption to go on, what you hear in the news, what you assume a behavior might mean. But if you try to help connect people's behavior to what they value and show those differences, it's pretty amazing what people can understand and build better bridges. So I also struggled. It was amazing to be an advocate, but I also wondered why it was necessary for me to have to be an advocate for them, to help them get through and navigate the systems, learning email and all these passwords and the requirements that you do all of these different things. They were extremely capable. Again, there's no deficit in ability to learn or anything like that. And sadly, this program ended, so that's why I'm not getting too into the program, because it was amazing, and we served thousands of students in the U.S. that all are back in their communities and working hard to help change the education systems in their communities. When students went home, they said their number one goal was, well, to get a job to help my family, but I'm getting that job so that my younger brothers and sisters can go to school. I'm going to start a program at my school so that people understand environment, sustainability, and you just saw the power of education, and not just education, but success in education. And so that's the piece I wanted to talk about, that we work on access and we think we just need to get people in and give them an opportunity, and if they get into the building, then we've done a really good job. And I don't think that that's really the case. I think our focus needs to be on student success and making sure that we have the structures and the systems and the policies in place for that to be true. But also what I see is another big issue, that we have the paradigm, that we have the values and the understanding necessary for everyone to be successful in higher education. So this summer, that program ended, and I had a great opportunity to transition into a new position at our college, the Officer for Access, Equity, and Inclusion. There's a little bit of work to do. It's overwhelming, but it's an amazing opportunity. And I will say, from my perspective, this is sad that I think the motivation is going to come from these things, but I also see it as great because at least there's some motivation coming. There are some new initiatives at the state with a priority on success and completion instead of just access. There is a push from the state level to focus on equity instead of equality. And again, it's been generations and entrenched in our institutions here of higher education. And so it's sad that it has to come from that high up, but I also think it gives all of us a little bit more kind of strength behind the work that we want to do. So I think some of the things that need to happen in terms of how we do what we do is more bridge programs, helping people understand what college culture is, because it is not the same as going to high school. We have this strange expectation that a student graduates from high school and some sort of magical thing occurs in 3 months that they're then all of a sudden ready for college. So I think that that's something we have to bridge in order for students to succeed, all students. One model that we're moving towards at our college are pathways, so that when students walk in, it's not it's called the cafeteria model, where you've got thousands of classes and you have to search through and navigate how you could possibly get to a degree at the end to a pathway so that when people come in, they have a guide. They know where they're going to go. They see the end before they begin. And that hasn't been a model that we've used much in higher education here until you get to your master's degree, which seems strange because students in community college need that as well. So those are some things that, and redesigning developmental education. This is a huge access barrier and affordability issue for a lot of students that are coming in underskilled. They're having to take years and multiple classes in order to get to their degree, and most give up by the time they get there, or by the time they get to ending their degree, they've run out of financial aid or resources to pay for school. So bridge programs, redesign DevEd, and work on some pathways. And then as far as how we approach this work, there's got to be some changes in our pedagogy. Again, working with students and the same teachers over and over, they wanted to understand how to engage this population of students that was learning a new language, learning a new culture, but on a wide scale, that doesn't happen. So we need to make that a priority. And I would say probably the biggest thing that needs to happen, and it'll be slow, because changing and shifting a culture is. But for any of those other things to work, we have to get out of this entrenched historical deficit thinking, where we try to fix the student, we try to fix the family, we try to fix the culture, we try to displace what's going on externally, and shift that to an equity-minded thinking. And that is not equality, where everyone gets the same thing. It's equity, where people get what they need in order to succeed. It's looking at outcomes, not looking at inputs. And I think that is our biggest barrier and opportunity as well, is to take that shift from a deficit thinking to equity. I have so many more things to say, but I got my 1 minute, so it'll be done. And so it's been a pleasure to just get to hear everybody speaking today and hear, see so many people coming out that support education locally, globally, and to hear some of the different inspiring things that are going on around. So thank you.
I want to say thank you to all of our panelists. Could we give them all a warm round of applause really quick? Thank you. So we are now going to move into our segment of question and answers for our wonderful panelists. So I would like to open the floor first to any individuals who may have come up with any questions for these panelists, and then we can move into the structured questions that Kim and I have prepared. So does anyone have any questions for our panelists? Enter. Yes, Doug has a question.
I think Deidre could perhaps respond to this because of her connection to West Africa, which I also have. And having taught there as a Peace Corps volunteer, one of the greatest challenges I had was having the appropriate educational material for my students. And I happen to have been in Liberia, so I know, even though it was an English-speaking country, how difficult it could be on the lower grade levels to reach the students with science material. So I spent a considerable amount of time working on learning English. I want to generally just know what Deidre thinks about that aspect of education and reaching students at the lower grade levels early on with good English instruction.
Is this better? Okay. I think it depends on the local goals. And if, I'm all for language learning in general because I believe it opens different paradigms in the mind. I believe that we can become more creative when we're able to see through different lenses. I feel like language is one of those things that forms our thought processes and our imagination. But as long as it's locally driven. English is an international language, so it is a tool for that can empower success in many different ways. So I don't know particularly in your context where I was where I frequent is our former French colonies. Many people there also would like to speak English, are asking me to help them learn English, so I do as I can. I think I feel like the learning both ways is the key here. And I think a lot of former Peace Corps do learn that, learn a lot, maybe if not more, during their service. Then I mean, it's hard to measure, but it's just a different type of learning. But the emphasis, when it goes both ways, I feel like is very positive.
Thank you.
Can I say something? I can speak a little bit to West African issues because I know about Ghana, Nigeria, and Togo. There are locally published English books that we use that are very good because it focuses on local issues, so it helps the children to understand the concept better than an English book coming from a foreign country. So I was able to compare because we use both an English book from England and from America, but also locally published English books by Nigerian authors, Ghana authors, and so on. So there are books there. People may need money to buy them or print them. So that's the challenge. So, but the books are there. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a question over here.
Thank you, Xander. I want to first say thank you. You guys gave a lot of good information. But one of the things that concern me when we have, and I'm going to be very blunt here, when we have a lot of white allies that go to Africa, and most specifically West Africa, where they say that they're going to go to, bring peace and diversity and all of that. And so while we're talking about human rights and we're talking about, education, maybe this question will go to you, Deidre, your organization. Is your organization talking about, foreign people coming from different countries, occupying resources in Africa? You talked about, bringing diversity and things like that, but it's like, is there anything being done to educate, for them to be empowered to be a sovereign country for themselves? Because a lot of foreigners come to the continent and they want to bring peace and love, but then are you teaching them to be empowered and to do the things that they need to do for themselves to protect their resources, to protect their land, to become more economically wealthy on their own without so-called allies? So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so the project is this on? Yeah. Our incubator, basically local people generate the solutions in that situation. Our priority project right now is a Northern Senegal integrative agriculture project that was created by a woman in West Africa. And she's designed it with a group of people. And basically, I'm a sounding board and look for various things that could take their project to the next level. They designed it, it's a food sovereignty project. It diversifies locally sourced foods for the population because it's an area of the country that in Senegal that is desertifying, and they currently import a lot of Chinese rice and French potatoes and French onions for their food source. So they don't want to do that anymore. And they know that they can grow more diverse plant life that they can eat and have more diverse livestock, a fish farm, and so that they can cultivate and be self-sufficient. So yes, that is definitely the goal. And one of the reasons why they're designing these projects so that they know every aspect of the project from the very beginning, because I don't want to be involved long term. If money's involved, it's to upstart something. And then we find a way for that project to self-sustain financially, locally, and so that they can create livelihoods for themselves, potentially take it to the next step or level, and maybe create even more livelihoods from that project incrementally. So yes, and that's a very good question. I'm very pleased you're concerned about that, because I'm very concerned about that as well.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Yes. This one's coming from my wonderful mother.
Nikki, I'm, without asking you to talk for an hour or 2 or 5, I'm very curious about what, generally speaking, what retooling developmental education looks like. I've worked, before I became a teacher, I was a teacher's assistant at Shemekere in the GED, and in those days we called it ESL departments, and I've also had youngsters under my care who've been through developmental ed at the community college, so I'm just very curious.
You might have good ideas too.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is hard to tell when
most of
you're
my
talking into
experiences are very personal, so I'm not sure that would help.
Well, this one isn't my specialty. I can speak more to the some ideas of how we can switch our, cognitive thinking and those sorts of ideas. But there's being work done statewide on redesigning developmental education, and it's shortening those tracks so that students aren't having to take one class and then one class and then one over 4 years. So doing them stacked, doing them accelerated, doing co-enrollment so that students who need to do a lower level reading are also doing a higher level reading, and matching those courses together. And there's some research that shows that that works, that just by students feeling like they're making progress towards their degree, they do better in those classes. Because often why students aren't successful is because the path looks so long. You think you're going to community college for 2 years, and you were just told you can't even start your degree for 2 more years, right? That's really hard to wrap your brain around. So I think it's shortening those timelines and making sure that they act as on-ramps as opposed to just these kind of chunks of courses that are supposed to then all lead to the next step. There's also talk about, redesigning how we look at math and things like that, so that if you're going into a degree that doesn't require all of the math that we now say everyone has to have, looking at that and maybe changing those requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to kind of tag on. So at Portland Community College, one of the things we look at with DevEd is how to couple it along with typical credit courses. And so exactly what she was saying, someone who maybe isn't in an ESOL program or doesn't test into essentially DevEd, development education, may have to take 2 years before they're even ready to take a typical 101 course. And so instead of that, I know what we're looking at and what we call our Panther path, which is specifically looking at an actual path towards a degree, is saying, okay, you're going to be learning these English courses, but while you're doing that, it'll be a writing course at the same time. And so you'll be able to capture the credit and not look at a 4-year time period for what should take 2 years. We're also looking at, like you said, just changing ourselves cognitively as we think about the fact that that is in fact education, and just learning English and becoming proficient in English is not, that there's inherent capacity within someone, regardless of their capacity to speak English. That English and being connected to that means that now you have the key to being able to learn. No, you've had it all the time. The capacity has always been there. Let's tap that and let's make sure that that's reflected in your credits and things. And so you don't end up with, using all of your financial aid, and now you can go take 101 like that. That's crazy. And so I know that we're looking at that.
Well, the deficiency is in part in our system because we don't have materials available in people's native language.
Exactly. You're hitting spot on it. So I know it's something that we're looking at. I'm glad to hear that
you come here with a doctor. Somebody comes here as a doctor and has to be an orderly in a hospital.
The students are often capable of doing coursework without having finished the whole sequence of English. The students that I worked with, they were in the country for 5 months, and because we worked with instructors and they knew they had enough support, wraparound services going on, they were in math classes 5 months into being here. They would not have passed an ESL class, but they passed their math classes and then passed GIS 6 months later, only having the lowest level of math. So it can be done. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. We'll go right here.
Thank you. Good evening. Just wanted to comment, quick comments and then just a question. First of all, I want to compliment you on a great panel. Got a lot out of this. I was invited to this, and I think it was a really great time spent here. Very informative. And Ms. Zhao, I want to give you compliments on the whole issue, this whole intersectionality of homelessness in education. Although I'm not here in official capacity, I'm the Director of School and Family Partnerships for PPS. My name is Richard Gilliam. For some months now, have been looking at this whole issue relative to the housing state of emergency and education. Anecdotally, we're seeing, Title X numbers as they increase, even regionally, with respect to this homeless, because it's not just a Portland state of emergency with respect to homelessness and housing. It's a regional. Beaverton District is experiencing the same thing. But it's a very important intersection in terms of us looking. We're looking anecdotally at kids who are living in vans, living in cars, and going to classes. I'm talking to principals who are aware of this issue. So internally, I've been really advocating, and actually I'm going to leave you my card because it's very fortuitous that you would talk about this because I'm currently working on this very issue. That's one thing. With respect to Dr. Johnson and the work that you're doing with the mentorship, it's so crucial with respect to education. We're doing mentorship, across the street at Jefferson every month. Boys to Men. We are doing mentorship at Boys Elliott and Ockley Green. But what we've noticed is how important this is to kids, to young, especially young black men, seeing professional, educated black men, mentors, people who look like them, Kofi, and talking to them about achievement, academic achievement, and standards is so important. But I'll get to my question I'll get to my question now. Looking at Article 26 of the Universal Declaration, it was here on point 3, talks about parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. Wondered, in the case of our country, this has taken the form of, as you know, with No Child Left Behind, previously this was one of the major operating principles was choice. And that manifested itself, obviously, with charter schools, standardized testing. And it's ironic I'm talking about that because, of course, today the president reauthorized the next iteration of this. Every student succeeds. But my question directly is to you, is this. How does choice, the issue of choice, as used as a lever to demand that this right of education is enforced, how does choice manifest itself with respect internationally? As we look at this from an international perspective, from a UN perspective, how does choice manifest itself, and is that and what does that mean in terms of a lever, in terms of enforcing this right of education, as we the main issue we're talking about this evening? So I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Okay, I can speak a little bit to that. I can speak, internationally, but also here, because I was there internationally before coming here. When I was in my country, I had to decide where I want to send my children to school. I can send them to a school not in my neighborhood, because I think that's where my child can succeed because of the support that exists in that school. The field of education is also something that I can suggest, and my influence is strong on my children. But when we came here, it was more difficult for me because, you know, we raise our children to be respectful, and culturally we are respectful to authorities. And teachers and school administrators, advisors, they are perceived as authorities by our children. And they have a very big influence on our children. So when they advise them, give them different ideas than their parents, most of the time our children, you know, tend to listen more to the school administrators, the teachers, or the advisors. And as a parent, I struggle with that. My son graduated from Franklin High School, you know, high GPA. He went to the East Coast to look for colleges. You know, he applied for Harvard, MIT, Northeastern, and Clark University, University of Portland here. All of them accepted him. You know, Harvard approval came later. And I said, you know, I gave him instructions based on my knowledge and the trend. What are the fields that are, you know, needed in 5 years, 10 years, 25 years? I'm in the business administration field, so that's what we talk about. I'm getting my doctorate, you know, very soon. So I know so I advise my children, and my child didn't listen to me. He listened to someone else who had more influence on him. You see, the culture, the system here take away our parental authority. We struggle with that, including the teacher, the school administrators, because here they see our child, you know, individually. They think that they can do anything, they can tell our children anything without consulting with parents. But from our culture, we are a family. We have to, you know, make decisions together. We lose that here. And my child went to, you know, chose another school. After a year and a half, he realized that, no, that's not what he wanted. He had a very good scholarship, $60,000 a year, like that. But he quit because he didn't listen to me. And he got into trouble. He was depressed because he realized he didn't listen to me after 1.5 years. So that's one example. And we have a lot of examples that I get from my community when I organize these type of dialogues. Our children go through that. So the parents lose that authority to be able to, you know, help their children choose the right field, because we don't have the luxury to go to any other field. You know, I serve on the board for Africa House, and about 80% of our refugee or immigrant children, they graduate in humanities. And after graduation, they don't get a job. They don't get a job. We prefer them to go to a different field, technology and all these things. But because they don't listen to us, they go to humanities, but they don't get the job that, you know, to improve the family situation. Because where they can find good jobs, good paid jobs now, and later maybe their children they can have that luxury. So we are struggling with that here more than, you know, back in Africa.
So this is mostly for you because you've worked with international students. I'm an international student myself, and it's basically a comment plus a question, or maybe perhaps if there is anyone here working with international students, you can go back and keep that at the back of your mind while you're working with us. So as far as language is concerned, we know that language is important, but it is not an absolute requirement for the understanding of certain concepts. A lot of students leave back home very smart in their schools. They do so well in math and other sciences. But they come here and they're forced to take low-level English classes for a while, 2, 3 quarters, and they're paying out of pocket, most of them. Obviously, the students you've worked with may be different, but where I'm from, we pay from our family money. And some of us, or a lot of us, I would say, are forced to drop out of school because of the money they've already paid and not having started their degrees. And the example you've given of seeing your degree so far away and realizing that you have to pay all this money, it is difficult even for the rich families, talk less of those who can't afford it. So many of my friends I know of, they did so well back home, but they come over here, they're forced to take some low-level English class 1, 2 before they take 101, and they only did 1 quarter. And when you talk to them, they realize, okay, you know what, I can't take this. I can't do it. And then they move to another state. And the school where I was at before, our international student coordinator, I don't want to be too critical, but she would often use statements that were quite demoralizing for a lot of the international students. You come to her office and you start explaining to her what challenges you're facing, and one of the first things she would tell you is to consider the option of going back home. You've just come to the United States to study on a student visa, and you have these big dreams. You come here to study computer science or to go to medical school, but not understanding the system before you come over here. Instead of helping you to understand the system, they tell you to consider going back home until you come up with some funds before coming back, you know? And then you observe students who have financial aid. They themselves struggle later on if they're forced to take some of these classes. If they face those challenges, even though they're not paying out of their pockets, imagine what we face, what that has on our dreams and our focus in school. You know, so a lot of these people, some of them who force themselves and end up going to school, regardless of the challenges, they end up changing their majors to something that they hope would be able to bring in money real quick. Because they live back home, families that sometimes depend on them. Like the example you gave, some of those students that came working with you, they had to quit school or not go to school because they had to work and help family, you see. So international students, the fees are expensive, and I do not know what policies go behind determining how much an international student should pay, you know, but I have to tell you that so many brilliant students have lost that opportunity to achieve their dreams and probably become some very, very influential people. Because if you were to work with them while they were in high school, you see the potential in them. But they come to college here, and with those challenges, it becomes an obstacle for them, and they can't move forward. So I just thought I should point that out to you. And if you go back to your school or you're working with international students, please keep that at the back of your mind. Help them out as much as you can. And please don't suggest going back home. It's very demoralizing.
Yeah. I'm sorry you had that experience. Certainly that's...
It's horrible, I have to tell you.
It's terrible.
At one point, I considered writing or communicating to the administration about her, but it's like I'm raised in a culture where assertiveness is not quite discouraged, but it's not quite encouraged either.
Certainly.
You see? So I look at her and I just look at myself and say, I have to do what I have to do, and not really report her so that she can be talked to and have that changed, you know, for us to be able to, you know, just get what we came here for. And so many end up staying here and go out of status because they can't maintain going to school, and they lose their visa status. And so they're scared. They have to move to another state. You know, they can't go back to school anymore. So please keep that at the back of your mind as you're working with international students.
Yeah, and unfortunately my work is not with international students directly anymore, but I appreciate your comments and, you know, communicating those barriers and frustrations and how, again, it can crush these wonderful dreams of education. And I agree, there's a big failure in most international programming in terms of getting students prepared to be a student at a U.S. institution, and then the support that is needed beyond just getting here to the classes and making sure students are connected and engaged. So there's a lot of opportunity there to improve in that area. And then as far as advising too, making sure that you've got people who are supportive of, what you're trying to do. And I also agree with your statement that you don't have to be a fluent English speaker to be a successful human in this world, or even in our colleges. You don't. I witnessed it for 13 years, students who had very low level of English, who completed certificates and programs. So thank you for your comments.
I would like to thank you too. As a first generation Chinese American, I empathize with this issue. I've seen how hard it is to learn a new language. Both of my parents grew up in China, and I see them struggling with English still today just because they grew up in another country. And this isn't only just limited to college. I go to Lincoln High School, as I said before, and a lot of people actually move from a lot of different countries just to attend my school and live in my city. So I know a lot of people from China, from the Middle East who come, and they don't know anything about our language. And it's not only that they struggle in classes like English or history, but it's also the discrimination that comes with it, because they can't speak English as well as others, and because they might not have the similar culture as westernized cultures have. It's especially hard to excel in school and to be a leader among my classmates. And I think that a way to fix this is to really have more accommodations, like the SAT. I know a lot of brilliant students that are at my school, and because they don't know English, they fail in the English and writing sections. And this is a huge issue, and I think that this can be accommodated by having tests that are tailored to their language and to ultimately help them learn English as they're being graded on tests and assignments.
Thank you. I've been asked briefly to share a little bit of my educational. Oh, yes.
No, I just wanted to encourage, teachers, administrators, not to discourage our, international students, African immigrants, and refugee children, because for example, those who attended high school in Africa, especially Togo, Ghana, their math level, is the college math level here. I can tell you because I went back to school here. The college maths that I was given, it's what I did, many years ago in high school. So they are very smart, and they can go to the science and technology field. But most of the time, they are directed to, humanities. They don't need, Africa doesn't need, humanities. We need technology and science to develop. We have all the resources to develop Africa, so we need science and technology. We already have humanities and sociology and all and politics. So, I'm being real with you. And, 80% graduates here in Portland in humanities, and they have the highest unemployment rate with college degrees. So if you graduating, in college and then, being unemployed, that's not where we need to go. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just wanted to add something to what he said here. I think it's a very important issue that he raised, and I think if you PCC or community colleges administrators that are here, if they can maybe take that back to school and think about how they can solve that. Because for me, for example, I came here as an immigrant, so I didn't come here as an international student. But I started going to school at PCC, but I didn't start taking those ESL classes because I guess I was lucky. By the time PCC realized I hadn't taken those classes, I was already done, and they started sending me the letters. But I feel like that never, it was never an issue for me. I was able to continue to get my master's even without taking ESL, even though French is my first language. I came from a French-speaking country. So I feel like, especially for the students, for example, them that come from Gambia, for example, or Ghana or Sierra Leone, which is an English-speaking country, why do they have to come here and then have to retake ESL classes because simply they took a test that was not tailored, like some of them said here, to their specific ways of taking tests, so they didn't get the grade that were expected of them from the community college, and then they make them sit and take some classes, you know, that are really not necessary for them. I mean, for me personally, I view English as it's the language, it's a tool that allows you to learn, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that you have to master, to learn, because what people need to know is as you learn, as you take other classes, you learn in English in those classes as well. So when you take a math class, you learn in English in that class as well. When you take a geography or computer class, you take in English class. So they don't have, I feel like it's not necessary really to make our brothers and sisters, especially those who are from those poor countries, you know, where, you know, the annual revenue per habit for the year for a family is like $1,000, you know, and then you make those people spend that here in 1 or 2 credits per quarter. So that's very expensive and hard to bear for us. So it would be really appreciated if you guys think about how to address that.
Okay, thank you. I've been asked briefly to share a little bit about my educational background. So I guess I'll just focus on mentorship and how that has changed my life. I'll just start in high school. I went to 2 different high schools and was proceeded to be kicked out of those high schools for various reasons. And it wasn't until I came to PCC and got my GED and high school diploma that my life started to take shape in the way I wanted it to. And I went through the Gateway to College and Yes to College programs, which are high school completion programs. And through those programs, I didn't have a mentor, really. I only had some, you know, very limited amount of support within the educational system, within the institutional system, which is studies have shown that some of the most important factors in male success or success in any educational system is the social interactions and the social integration that happens, and that comes from both the side of the institution offering opportunities for socialization, and also it comes from the student taking the power of choice and deciding to go and take those opportunities. And it wasn't until I joined the African American Men's Scholar Program that my life started to really change, and I started to like self-actualize, and I started to really recognize myself as a young man and as a leader. And mentorship for me has just been an outstanding part of my life on a daily basis. I have somebody that I can work with one-on-one for, you know, only the time is allotted at 1 hour a week, 1 day a week, but I definitely take advantage of more of that time. So I would just like to say that mentorship, I think, is a huge part of education as a human right, and within education, under the umbrella of education, there is mentorship, because it's a lot more than just learning about a classroom, learning through books, learning through, you know, the computer, but really learning from an individual who has achieved things in life that you wish to achieve and that I personally wish to achieve. So I just have to give credit to Dr. Johnson for supplying that and for being there for me. And for those of you who haven't entered into mentorship or who have questioned it or anything like that, I strongly encourage everyone to partake in mentorship of somebody in your life, or to seek mentorship else in your life, because it definitely gives you the exponential growth both horizontally and vertically that is very, very important for all of us to succeed, not only for ourselves, but when we self-actualize, we're actually able to turn around and give back to those others, and, you know, to solve the problems that a lot of international students are facing. So through mentorship, you know, we can all build ourselves up vertically and horizontally, and then turn around and give back to others. So that's just a little bit about me. Thank you.
That was beautiful. I'm so glad that you shared your story too, as to why you got to even be our moderator, which is amazing. So my name's Kim Smith, and I have the honor of doing our final thank yous. So, and hopefully it'll behave itself, right? So for all of you, to our amazing panelists, one more time, if we can do a round of applause. So I teach sociology at PCC Sylvania, and we're very thrilled, and I'm so glad you were able to do the welcome and welcome folks to PCC, and I can say the thank you for coming, and also Mount Hood Community College and Portland Community College. Community is our middle name, right? This is very important to us to recognize the issues of access and affordability. I also, in addition to teaching, I'm also well, a member of the UNA, so thank you to the United Nations Association, but also the Greater Portland Sustainability Education Network. And several of our founding members are here, which is great. And so part of the things that I just wanted to end with, if you're not familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations launched these in September. The United States signed them. This network, we are one of 138 centers around the world who are committed to utilizing education to create a more sustainable, just, and equitable world. And so the number 4 goal on here is inclusive and equitable quality education, to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So just recognize that we are aligning with initiatives that are going on around the world. The 5th goal, ensure or achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. Okay, these are very essential questions, and of course men as well. So I do want to just recognize, what does that mean when we talk about social class, when we talk about race and ethnicity or religion, and the things that we're all working on to create a world where we can live in an interdependent way. So I just want you to recognize there are social goals, there are economic goals, there are 17 of them, and of course the environmental ones as well. So we have a variety of sponsors. I'm just going to just show you the names real quick here. Of course, Portland Community College, and some of you have been filmed, so hopefully that's all good. If you need to sign a waiver, there's right over there. Trash for Peace and the Black Student Union Kids First Project. We also have the tables. If you didn't get a chance to enjoy the tables or sign up to be on listservs and learn about the activities that are happening, please make sure to check those out. Same thing with Lonnie Fon, of course, with Deidre. Deidre, that was so interesting to learn about that work. The Human Rights Commission, thank you so much for the booklets. Please do grab one of those, or a couple if you need, and you want to share them with others. Togo Core, thank you. This is very interesting too, and I'm going to continue. I want to come dance with you, right? We should all go dance with their events. And the No Agenda Foundation, thank you, Damon, for that support that you've provided. Okay, so we do have some more refreshments. This is just a time to just connect with each other. If you want to come up and connect with the speakers, feel free. To all of you, God bless you, and all of your opportunities that you have, I hope will just continue to open doors and not face those barriers that you've heard that have been debilitating, but more celebratory. Thank you.